y'all. My name is Max. I'm an instructor at Youth Code Jam. And for today's Spurs Give Summer Coding Camp activity, we're going to be making a game out of some passing drills. So if you play basketball, you probably know that when you pass the ball, you want to aim for where your target is going to be and not where they currently are. So this game, we're going to make a little game out of that today in Scratch. And this is what it's going to look like when it's done. So you can press the green flag to start, and then your target will move. And you will have to press the space bar and get your target to catch it. So I'm not very good at it, but this is basically how it works. It'll count how many times you've passed and how many times it was a successful pass. So let's get started. In order to get started, we do have a starter project. So this will have basically what I have on my screen here. It'll have our sprites and a couple variables set up for us. So you can start at the B here. So bit.ly/sgcc0722 start 2. I know that's kind of long, but this is where you'll go to start where I'm starting. And then after we're done, you can, after your code works, you can add on to your project in any way that you want to. The first thing you might want to do is change the title from starter to, just passing drills or whatever you want it to be. If you would like to save your work very easily, you can join Scratch. You can sign up for an account. Make sure if you do so, you have the permission of a trusted adult, and then you can get started coding and save your work easily. Okay, so once you're here, it should automatically have the player sprite selected, but if it's not already selected, go ahead and click on the player sprite in the sprites pane to select that sprite. And then we'll start coding this one. So the first block we'll need is a green flag event. And since it's a hat block, you can place it anywhere you want to on your workspace. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up a couple of our variables. So in the variables category, we are going to get the set variable block, and we're going to get 2 of those because we need to set up 2 of our variables. So one of them will be hits and one of them will be shots. And we're going to set both of these to 0. So hits are when we actually have a successful pass, and then shots are how many passes we attempt total. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set our starting position for this sprite, which we are going to make a little bit random. So in motion, the first step is to get the block that says go to XY. And instead of typing in numbers here, we're going to make it random. So in operators, we need to grab the block that says pick random, and you will place it in the value spaces on the go to XY block. So in Scratch, you want to make sure that the left side of the block that you're inserting is over the space that you want to insert it in, and then the space will highlight, and then you can let go. So we're going to pick random here, and the values we're going to put in here will make it to where we stay in this area. So we're going to do minus 195 and then minus 25 for X. And then for Y, we'll need another pick random block. And for this one, we are going to type in the values minus 82 and 84. So for X, it's minus 195 to minus 25, and for Y, it's minus 82 to positive 84. Cool, so that'll put us in a random position when we start. That way you don't always start in the same position. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a message. So in events, we're going to grab the block that says when I receive message 1, and this is another hat block, so it won't attach to our previous script, but we can place it anywhere we like in the workspace. So when I receive message 1, we're going to have multiple messages. So rather than just using message 1, let's name our new message. So we'll click on new message using the drop down. And then we're going to name this one move. And this will be a message that will allow another sprite to trigger code on this sprite. So this will be called move. When we move, we want to go to another random position. So you can go back into motion and get the go to XY block and then retype in these values for pick random because we want it to be the same as this go to block. Or you can right click on this go to block and select duplicate, and it'll duplicate all 3 of these blocks together and then attach it underneath when I receive move. Cool. So that's all of our code for this sprite. If you click the green flag, not much will happen. You can click the green flag multiple times to see it go to a random location, but so far not too much is happening in our game. Okay, let's move on and write the code for the ball. So we have a ball sprite that's going to be traveling from our player sprite towards the right side of our stage. And the first thing that we want to do for the ball sprite is get an event block that will trigger our pass. So if you are using a mouse and keyboard, you can use the block that says when space key pressed. If you are using a tablet with a touchscreen, you may want to choose when this sprite clicked, and then you'll trigger your pass by clicking on the player or on the ball sprite. This may not work if you have it completely hidden, so you may need to select on looks if you do it this way for the tablet. Instead of hiding the sprite like we have it hidden right now, you'll want to make sure that you're showing and then setting the ghost effect to 99. So just like this, and then you'll be able to click on basically the player sprite and it'll register that the ball sprite is being clicked. But for right now, we're going to do it with the keyboard. So we're going to use when space key pressed. And the first thing we want to do when we press the space key is show our sprite because currently it is hidden. The next thing we want to do is we want to make sure that it's always in the correct position. So under motion, there's a block that says go to, and by default, it'll say random position, but we can use the drop down to select player. And that way, wherever our player is on the screen, the ball will always be coming from where the player is. The next thing we want to do is every time we pass the ball, we want to record that with our shots variable. So we are going to change shots by 1 and make sure that you're grabbing the change variable block and not the set variable block, because we want to add 1 every time and not set it to 1 every time. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a little sound. So we are going to grab the block from the sound category that says start sound, and then use the drop down to select basketball bounce. And the next thing we're going to do is make the ball move. So we're going to move it across the screen once all of this is set up. So we are going to get a block from control that is a loop, and this is a conditional loop. So this loop will repeat code until a certain condition is met. So our condition, we are going to go to operators and find this comparator block. This one is the greater than block. So the mouse should be pointing towards the left side. And we're going to put this in the pointy space on the repeat until. And then the two things that we want to compare are our X position and a certain number. So the certain number that we're going to do is 230. because it's all the way on the right side of our screen. So once our ball gets too far this way, we're gonna hide it again. And then we need to get here in the left side our current X position. So in motion, we have a little oval block that will get our current X position of the sprite. And our X position, remember, is side to side. And if you ever forget that, Scratch has a really cool, in the sprites pane, it has an indicator with some arrows saying X is side to side and Y is up and down. So inside of this repeat until, we are going to ask the computer a question using an if-then statement. So you can find one of those under control. And we're actually going to grab this time the one that says if then, and then it also has a space for else, which is our default case. If the computer answers our question with no, then the things that we put inside of else will run. And if it answers yes, then the blocks in the top part will run. So in the pointy space, the thing that we want to ask the computer is this sprite, is the ball touching the target? So the very first block, if you go to sensing, the very first block is a pointy block, and it'll say touching mouse pointer, but we can use the drop down to select target. We're going to select target and then place this block in the pointy space on the if then else block. Here, we're going to do the things that we want to do if we actually hit the target. So the first thing that we're going to do is make a sound. So we're going to start sound catch. Then what we'll do is we're going to change our hits by 1, because that's when we actually, hit our target. And then we are going to broadcast a message. So we're going to broadcast actually a different message than we created before. So find the broadcast message block in events. It's towards the bottom. And from the drop down, select new message. And this one, we will say hit, because we finally hit our target. And we don't have to worry about receiving this message yet. We just need to worry about sending it right now. The next thing that we'll do is in looks, we'll grab the hide block, because we want the ball to hide again. And then we will stop this script. So in control, there's a block that says stop all, but really we just want to stop this one script. So we are going to use the drop down and say stop this script. Select the option that says just this script. And we're going to put that underneath the hide block. The next thing that we're going to do is write the code for if the answer to this question, is the ball touching the target, is no. Then we are going to move to the right. So the way we do that is change X, and it's by default it says 10. I'm going to make it 15. That'll make it go a little bit faster. There's a couple different ways to mess with the numbers in this project and make it more challenging or an easier game. And this is one of those places where you can change the speed of the ball. So the faster the ball goes, the easier it might be. But there's also other ways to do that as well. At the very end, outside of the repeat until, we will need to finally hide our ball. So altogether, the code for the ball should look like this. And feel free to pause the video anytime you need to go back and look at the code. So let's see what happens if we test our code now. So if I press the space bar, you can see the ball will travel to the right, and when it hits the target, it'll make the noise. So we know this is working well. Okay, let's move on and write the last little bit of our code for our target. So what we want our target to do is start at the top on the right side of our area over here, and then go all the way down to the bottom. And then once it reaches the bottom, go back to the top. So make sure you select the target sprite in the sprites pane on the bottom right of Scratch. Don't worry about your code, your ball code, it's still there. You just have to select the ball. Each sprite has its own code that lives on that sprite. Okay, so for our target, the first thing we're going to want to do is when we start the game, we want to broadcast move. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to decide what happens when we receive hit. So this is whenever we actually hit our target with the ball, what's going to happen. So our first thing that we're going to do is in variables, we have a third variable called position. And we are going to set this position to pick a random number again. So in operators, we're going to pick a random number from 55 to 190. And then we are going to stop other scripts in this sprite. So that stop all block, we're going to get that again from the bottom of the control category and choose other scripts in this sprite. And then we're going to play with our costume. So we will switch costume to, well, if we go to costumes, the costumes tab here, we can see we have the normal costume and then the hit costume where our target catches the ball. So the first thing we're going to do is switch to hit costume. Then we will wait 1 second. So in control, there's a block that says wait 1 second. And we don't need to change the number here. 1 second is fine. And then we are going to get another one of these switch costumes blocks and switch it back to normal costume. Finally, we will broadcast another message here, which you can find in events. And this one is going to say broadcast move. So that'll send a message to our player sprite that once we actually hit it, we're going to go to a new position. The next thing that we're going to do is decide what happens with this sprite when we receive the move message. So we'll need another when I receive block, and it's a hat block so you can place it anywhere. But this time we're going to select the option move, and the first thing we want to do is switch our costume to normal costume just to make sure we're on the correct costume. Remember, we're going to do this at the beginning of the program, so we'll start out with our normal costume. The next thing we'll do is we'll set our random position again. So we need a set variable block, and we'll change it using the drop down to position. And again, we're going to use the same pick random 55 to 190, so you can duplicate that if you like, or you can grab another block from operators and insert it into the set position block. The next thing we're going to do is set the position again. So this is just a variable. So the position of our actual sprite won't actually be changing. It's just going to be a number that's held in this position variable. But now we're actually going to make that change the position using the goto block. So with our goto block, which you can find in motion, for X, we're going to use that position variable. So in the variables category, we're going to find the position oval block and insert it into the X value space on the goto block. And then for Y, what we're going to do is just select 90. So that way our target sprite will always stay in the same Y position when we start. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a little loop. We're going to make a forever loop. So you can find that in control, and this will repeat code forever or until other scripts in this sprite are stopped. So inside of the forever, we're going to be constantly asking another question. And we need the if-else block to do this again. So what we're going to ask is if we're not touching this color of the our boundaries here. So in operators, there's a block that just says not. It's a pointy block. We're going to put it in the pointy space on our if then else block. And then our not block has another pointy space in it. And for this one, we're going to go to the sensing category and get the one that says touching color. So this should be the second block down in the sensing category. And here, you'll have to click on this colored space to select the color that we want to select. And we want to make sure all the values here are 0. So it's just going to be black. Unless you change the color of your boundaries, then you can use maybe the dropper to go get the color. So you click on the little dropper here in this menu, and then hover over whatever color you want and click on it. So you can see 000 is my color. And that'll let Scratch know that these are our boundaries. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to change our Y value. So we want this sprite to be going moving down, and so we're going to change our Y by -7. And this is another number that you can play around with to change the difficulty of this game. And then finally, we are going to get another go-to block and place it in our else. So if the answer to this question is no, then we are going to go to an XY position. But for X, we're also going to base it off of our variable. So in the variables category, we're going to get the position block and place it in that X space. And then for Y, we're going to put in 90. So let's see what this looks like if we test it out now. This should be our working game. So if we press the green flag, then our target sprite will go from the top to the bottom and then back to the top. And then the hit works. So when we actually hit our target, it'll catch the ball, change position. Our player sprite will change position, and we also have everything being recorded correctly. Cool. So that's it for this game. Feel free, once your code is working, to add more to it. Maybe you can make the player sprite face different directions, and you can make the ball bounce off of the boundary. That would be something kind of cool to do. Or you can change the sprites to maybe make them look a little bit more like yourself. I don't know. You probably have better ideas than I do. I know you're all very creative. Thank you for coding with us, Youth Code Jam and Spurs Give. We're super happy to be able to do these. Thank you.